Hey everybody, we're due coming up here for some more updates with Logic. This is something that Apple's always shown that they're committed to. And I think I wanted to make this video because there's 5 predictions about the next set of major features that are coming that I wanted to talk about and get your feedback and see what you think is going to happen. But the 5 things that I think are going to be happening with Logic coming up, that's what this video is all about. So let's dive right into this. The first thing I think we're going to be getting is immersive audio, some immersive audio features. And we can do immersive audio in Logic right now, but it's a huge pain in the butt. Dolby Atmos does have a workflow with this, and I do a lot of stuff with ambisonics, primarily because YouTube uses ambisonics, Facebook uses ambisonics, the Unreal Engine for gaming uses ambisonics, and Apple uses Dolby Atmos for Apple Music now. So they've gone a little bit different direction. I'm sure that deal was very lucrative for Dolby and Apple. And I'm not really interested in using Dolby Atmos, but because that's the format for Apple Music, a lot of us are going to be forced into adopting that as well. But Logic, I mean, it's like Apple has this expectation now for immersive audio with their music tracks, but their leading music creation software doesn't do it natively and has some issues. So there's definitely been some buzz online about Logic getting some more native ability to do this, and so we'll see how that works. When Apple's Final Cut Pro started doing Dolby Digital for DVD creation with all of that suite of software, they put Dolby Digital inside Compressor and inside the export tools there. So I think that we should expect something similar with Logic. And then maybe along with that, they'll give us some of those other multi-channel format things that Logic is really missing. For instance, when I'm doing some of this stuff with ambisonics, I have to put it into quad, but then I can't use any 5.1 features. It's like you can't have multiple formats for multi-channel. A lot of cool software does that, and I wish that Logic would do it as well. The next thing would be some of the universal control features. This is the new feature that lets you to have like an iPad sitting next to your computer, and your mouse can go between the two devices and drag files between certain apps and things. There's no question that Apple, by announcing universal control, was saying, sorry guys, you're not going to be getting a Logic version for the iPad. They're showing over and over and over that they're not interested in making the iPad do what your computer can do. And so just a sad reminder that we're not going to get the full version, but we're going to be getting a lot of cool features that use this new format. Things like tying in GarageBand. And so we could drag a file from here into there, or we could use some feature on GarageBand or any other music app and copy between the two just by dragging with your one mouse across both devices. So there are some things that would be interesting to do. And I think it's going to be exciting to see what new features they bring up with that. One of the other pieces that tie into that I'm going to talk about is my number 5. So hold on for just a minute. It'll be kind of interesting to see what they envision music-related things will need between those two. Number 3, they're definitely going to be bringing some updated interface things. There are still a number of effects and instruments which have old interfaces, graphic interfaces. And so I think that they're going to be updating things like hopefully Sculpture or Ultra Beat or some of the other audio effects which still have the old interface. I hope that they're going to revamp even more of those instead of just kind of letting them linger on. So that's number 3. Actually, as a part of number 3, I'm expecting we're going to get some more drummers and styles. I mean, we really are in need of like some metal and country and a few other styles that I think we could really expand the drummer into other places. Metal especially. I mean, metal is a huge genre for a lot of people who use Logic. Let's get an actual drummer so we don't have to use a third-party tool for that. Number 4, over the last couple of years, Logic really has been adding on to their MIDI capabilities. It's not something that they've ever stopped doing. For instance, it wasn't too long ago that we could deactivate MIDI input ports. There's other things with the MIDI sync and time code and all of that. So they've been adding all this stuff up, but I think it's time that we're actually going to get separate MIDI inputs, meaning that I can hook up 4 different keyboards and they all show up on tracks as their own input instead of having to funnel them all through the environment into the sequencer. The current setup is horrible in that one regard. Everything else has been improving. I think that we're finally going to get individual MIDI inputs. So any of you who know what I'm talking about, if this does happen, you're going to rejoice. I mean, it's going to be amazing. And then the last thing that I think is on the works, which ties into the universal control features, would be the IDAM Plus protocol. That's what allows us to hook up like a mobile phone, one of the Apple phones, the iPads, the iPods, the iPhone, all of those devices with iOS. We can hook those up with their cable and then use them as an input into the software. MIDI goes back and forth and audio goes one way. I think one of the next things we're going to get is the wireless version of that. And so we don't have to have the cable anymore, but we can now connect just wirelessly with a good router. Part of the reason why I think that that's next is because the speeds for wireless connectivity have gotten so much faster, and the devices themselves, the new M1 iPad has gotten so much faster that it only makes sense that we're going to be able to utilize that bandwidth to really be able to communicate better between the two without necessarily having to rely on a wire. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things that we're going to be looking at next, is that ability to continue this connection without necessarily having to connect it physically. And that'll tie in with the universal control, because I think the iPad could easily become an extension of our setup as long as it's set right next to us. Then we could use our mouse to make adjustments on instruments on the iPad and go right back to our screen, and they're all connected. And so, have a slick plugin that we could load up in Logic that is like having the iPad on a track, and then that power is just coming back and forth between all of that. I think we're at the point now in terms of data speeds and all of that would be really possible. Okay, so those are my 5 things. I really expect, maybe not, this very next version, but in the near future, that these things are all going to happen because they make sense with Apple's way of thinking and the things that they've prioritized. I'm not saying that Logic is coming to the iPad. I don't believe Apple will do that. I think that they're very stubborn about certain things and pushing forward instead of bringing the back, looking back and bringing old stuff into the new area. I don't think they're interested in that. I think they're interested in reimagining things. And these things, except for the MIDI inputs, which would just be common sense to finally add that, all the rest of them really could be reimagining things. And so those are my 5 things. What are your 5 things? What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is likely to come with the next version? Is it going to be 10.7, or is it going to be Logic Pro 11, or something totally new? GarageBand Pro. You tell me what you think in the comments. Otherwise, hope you're having a good week, and we'll see what's coming up here shortly.